Hey folks, John Boehm here, the Let's Talk Beef podcast, coming at you actually a week late. I was hoping to have the podcast out last Friday, but funny enough, my family and I were on vacation in Texas, and we lost power for 60 hours, and then it took us 5 days to get back to Minnesota, so it was kind of a adventurous week last week, and I was not expecting that, so week late on the podcast, but it's still a good one. I think you'll enjoy it. It was actually with a rancher down in Texas. His name is Brandon Howley of Happy Hollow Beef. Brandon is a third-generation rancher. His grandfather, Chuck Howley, started the ranch after his NFL career. Chuck was a linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, and I think he was the MVP of Super Bowl V, if I'm not mistaken. But he was the MVP of one of the Super Bowls. I think it was 5. But anyways, Brandon was a great guest. He accommodated us very nice, showed us around the ranch. We actually got to see a calf born out in the pasture, driving around in his Bronco, and had us in their cool kind of summer lake house thing for dinner, and just had a great time with Brandon. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Brandon's a lot of fun. He's taken the ranch and gone in a different direction, doing more grass-fed beef and selling direct to consumers and restaurants and like that, and really kicking butt. So I think you'll really enjoy this podcast. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks for taking the time, and have a good one, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye. So as we've been talking, though, I'll just quickly start here that I am in Willis Point, Texas.
Willis Point,
Texas.
yep.
With Brandon Howley.
Yep.
You are, what is considered third generation? Third
yep.
generation rancher here.
Yeah.
So why don't you just start with a little, I guess, let's just give me a quick synopsis of who you are, and then we'll come back to the ranch and the family and all that.
Okay. So who I am, that's a loaded question.
I know. It always is. It always is, isn't it?
Yeah. So I went to the University of Alabama, then joined the military halfway through that because I was kind of just trying to find my path in life. So when I got into the military, I found being a corpsman was, halfway my calling. It was something I was very passionate about, outdoors, all that stuff. But when I went on deployment and when I went to go do these training missions with these folks, I developed a condition called bilateral compartment syndrome with popliteal entrapment. And so that basically threw me on the bench for the military, and after that I couldn't do my job in the military because I couldn't run and do all these things. So after that I got medically discharged and came back here. Came back to San Antonio. And when I came back to San Antonio, I had heard, word that, we were trying to figure out what to do with the ranch. And so I dropped it on my wife, like, hey, would you be willing to relocate to Dallas, see if we can run this thing and make it work? So when we got up here, I didn't know how bad it was. Mm-hmm. And I walked into the meeting with the family, and everybody was kind of sitting around the table, and the attorney asked us, who's gonna run this thing because your grandparents are getting old, and it's gonna come time to have to line something up. Well, nobody realistically raised their hand really fast because they knew what a financial burden it would actually be if they did take this on. And I guess I was at a point in my life where I was just young enough to be that crazy and push forward with my wife on that. And so I started working here, and when I started working more with the animals and actually integrating all of these different ideas that I had for the ranch is where I found that we were doing really well, but also lacking at the same time. Mm-hmm. So since 1977, we've been a conventional beef operation where you raise your cattle, you take them to the sale barn, and that's your nut for the year. Yep. That worked in the past for my grandfather for, a little while. But if you ask any cattle rancher, going to the sale barn is basically like a death sentence for any herd because you're not going to get half of what they're worth. So I said, okay, let's let's look at this a little bit differently. Let's flip the script. What is it that the sale barn is then doing to sell those animals to make their profit? And so we realized if we cut out, the sale barn and the middlemen and, all these different steps, we could actually implement or build that back into our revenue stream. And that's first what got us thinking about going to the retail space. And then I met Dave Hutchison. And Dave works with Texas A&M, and he was a feedlot science professor at Missouri. And what he said was he was like the first person that like believed in this like crazy idea. And the only reason I say it was crazy is because the expectation of the time that I wanted to get this done in. So I said we're going to revamp this entire ranch to be AGA certified, GAP certified, homegrown by Hero certified, and Go Texan. And so he was like, all right, that's going to probably take you about 2 years. I was like, we got to get this done in one. So I set out and started getting all of the things that we needed to get our audits, squared away. And about month 7 of actually working on it, we submitted our inspection times. And so they called us back. They got back out here. They inspected us. I didn't have one hiccup with any of my certifications. Passed with flying colors. The GAP certifier and the AGA certifier said this is like unheard of to basically revamp an entire ranch in 7 months and make it, a GAP Step 4 quality, AGA already hitting the standards without any, having to come back and redo anything. Mm-hmm. So we were cooking with gas, and once we kind of did that, it's all just taken off for the most part. We rolled out with our retail side in November. We've been hitting up the farmers markets with that, and then the farmers markets are ironically where we found most of our larger customers. So even though we were catering to, your local yokels, all your folks that you grew up with and all that stuff, there's actually a massive network of people that just are genuinely concerned about where their food's coming from. They want to know their producers. They want to reconnect with the land. They just want to see where it's all coming from, because I feel like people are so deceived. And we were talking about this even a little bit today. Yeah. About the potential mislabeling of foods or the country of origins and all these other things that really affect an American producer. Yep. So with that in mind, a lot of these folks from the Dallas Independent School District approached me, a lot of chefs, grocery stores, people that want to do collaboratives. And from that, we have been able to diversify the ranch into so many different, facets of beef ranching, that it's actually evolved us into something I would have never dreamt of before. Yep. So yeah, just that's quick in a nutshell. I'm sorry I was kind of all over the place with that.
No, that's fine.
But yeah.
So how did you end up in Alabama? I gotta go back to that. A guy from Texas goes to Alabama. That just seems.
Yeah, so it was kind of a funny story. So I played football in high school, and
so Nick Saban called you?
No. Yeah, I was hoping he would, and I would be one of those select few. But yeah. I actually went down there and visited, and Leroy Jordan is a really good family friend of ours, and so he had talked up Alabama to me, and he's like, hey, if you don't know of any good schools in Texas, or if you don't like the schools in Texas and you want to go see, the East Coast, check out Alabama. And so I went with my dad and for a college visit, and then I went for one by myself, and the one by myself convinced me that was the school I needed to go to. So I went early in the summer. I tried walking on the team, made like the practice squad, but it wasn't. I was like, nah, I'm good. I want to save my body if I'm not going to be on the field. Yep. So I ended up going studying PR there, and really liking public relations. Yeah. Yep. And that was a love-hate relationship, to be honest. Like, I loved the creativity that it invoked being in that major, but I didn't like necessarily the having to cover for somebody or, doing those types of press releases. So that's when I decided that, that wasn't my path, and then I alt-righted to the military and got into a medical field.
So you were a medic in was it Navy?
Yeah, the Navy. So Army has their own medical personnel, and then the Marine Corps don't. So Marine Corps will actually pull from the Navy. So we're actually Navy corpsmen would be the combat medics for the Marines.
Okay. Did you like medical work?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, that was the one thing that I was extremely passionate about. I wanted to be a doctor after that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always got high aspirations, that's for sure. And it's going in 1,000 different directions. But when I get my mind set on one thing, I'm all about it.
Yep. So what happened? So, I mean, you got medically discharged. Any, what happened? Do you, how did that develop, or any ideas? Or
So we were on a training mission.
Internal thing?
Yeah, it's an internal thing. And honestly, so we were on a training mission, and how it all kind of transpired, or I found out about it, is that we were going and running and gunning, and all of a sudden my feet just stopped working, like floppy feet. And then you get a really bad Charlie horse in both your legs, and then you're like, oh, this really hurts, it's tight, can't move my legs, something's got to be going on here. So I went in. They couldn't figure it out. It's not hereditary. It's not this. It's not that. They even did this crazy test called a striker test, where they get these big needles and they shove them into your muscle groups to test the pressures inside the muscle.
That must have felt good.
Woo! Yeah, it made my wife pass out, actually. So, yeah, we went to the appointment.
She's going to love you told that.
Yeah, we went to the appointment. They stuck me, and I, squeezed her hand, and she was just done. Yeah, sweating and everything. I was like, this was for me. You were my moral support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get the needle done, so then what, how did it go from there?
Yeah, sorry. Trail off with that story.
That's all right.
So got the needle test done. They were like, yeah, your millimeters of mercury or whatever is 30 or 40 over what it should be. We need to, take you into surgery right now. And I was like, no. And I asked them, if I end up getting the surgery, what's the prognosis of getting that? And they were like, well, it's 6 months recovery time per leg, per surgery. And, it's kind of an exploratory fasciotomy is what they told me. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Because if you open up too many of the muscle groups in that lower leg area, you're not going to be able to take inclines. It just really decreases your mobility over your lifetime. So it's kind of like back surgery. It's you want to put it off for as long as possible if you can live with it, is kind of what they told me. So that's the way I went, and I told them that was my choice, and they said okay, and luckily they agreed with me that it was all service related, because they couldn't figure out where it came from, honestly. So and I didn't have any type of issues beforehand. So yeah. So they rolled me out. I was in 29 Palms, actually, because the Army kinked it, and they told me, no, you're fine, go back. Get back on the front line. So I go to 29 Palms, and they start...
What is 29 Palms?
So 29 Palms is a Marine Corps base out in the Mojave Desert.
Okay.
And so they put me with a unit out there, and then they quickly found out that I wasn't, 100% with running and doing all the things that were required to actually perform in a unit setting. So got rolled out to the hospital, and while I was at the hospital, that's when the doctors took an interest in me and actually had some continuity of care, because that was the biggest thing at Fort Sam Houston, is that it was such a large base that, seeing one doctor consistently was kind of hard to do. So that, luckily, with the smaller base, found a good doctor, got him, thinking about what could be going wrong, what else could be going wrong, and he couldn't figure it out either. So he was just like, I'm sending you up the chain again to see if they'll med board you. I said, hey, you know what, either way, I'm already here. I got 2 years left. And then they tried to extend me, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what we're going to do here, but we got it figured out at the end, and but then that left me at a crossroads again. I went into the military thinking I was going to do this job and be able to kind of maintain this lifestyle for a little bit, and that the world shakes you and you keep on moving. But when I got out, I was like, realistically, what am I going to do? I have a background in medical, military, infantry, all that stuff. Like, how do you translate that into a resume?
Mm-hmm.
So when I went out to job hunt, it was really tough to relate myself back into the civilian setting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why that this was a, if you will, serendipitous kind of event, because the family was in need. I was, in my own way, in a need.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a perfect fit. And I think that doing this probably set me on a path that I would have never found otherwise. I have so much unlimited potential for not only just the ranch and my family, but for so many people that are involved in these projects that we're doing out here, that it's going to have a profound and lasting impact. And I can go into that a little bit more in the podcast when we get down the line a little bit. But the projects we're working on with the school systems and all that is going to be really, really fun.
Mm-hmm. So let's go. So now we kind of got Brandon wrapped up here somewhat.
Right.
But let's go. So tell me about the ranch. How did it come together, or where does it start, or how, you're third generation, so where does it start?
So my grandfather played for the Dallas Cowboys back in the 60s and early 70s, or through to the early 70s. And
Chuck
Howley, yeah. Chuck Howley was his name. And so he and Leroy Jordan, who was another Cowboys player at the time, bought two ranches next to each other. So Leroy's was on the other side of 20 in Willis Point, and we were on the opposites of this side of 20.
So this is the south side?
This would be, yes,
south side. Okay.
So we're south side of 20. He would be on the north side of 20. And they were raising Black Angus, and they had all sorts of grand, ideas of what this was going to turn into through their breeding program. And I showed you their pamphlet earlier today.
What year was this?
This was probably early 80s at this point.
Early 80s?
Yeah, they'd gotten, so it took them about, a year to get the cattle and the land cross-fenced and, to do all this stuff, probably a year or two.
So when did they buy it?
This was bought mid-70s.
Mid-70s?
Yeah.
It took a couple of years to get.
Couple of years, and then the official year that it is established is 77.
Okay.
Yeah, so since 77, they've been building this thing up. And it was a conventional cow-calf operation, for the most part, raising Black Angus, and then we'd cross them with like a, F1 or some type of Beef Master or Brahma. Those were the three main ones.
Yep.
So, anyway, then Leroy ended up selling his place, and that's what became Four Winds Steakhouse now. And so he started his lumber yard after that, right after that. And my grandfather held tight on his half of what he had, and continued to run cattle out of here until probably the 2005 or 6. Then he started kind of getting the effects of his dementia, and to the point where he had to step away from the operation because he was no longer able to make critical decisions on his behalf. Mm-hmm. So since that time, the ranch has kind of been in a decline because of his absence. And just to set the frame a little bit, what my grandfather had built is we had about 120 broodmares and then 19 studs, because we run a quarter horse operation as well. Mm-hmm. But we were close to 1,000 head or more, and then we had about 4,000 acres back then. So what you're seeing right now is basically the skeleton crew of what that was. Mm-hmm. And, to the best of my abilities, I'm trying to recreate that through a natural method of reproduction instead of having, cows and heifers and all that stuff bust in from other ranches, because that was really a point of pride for my grandfather to have all his genetics still be in play when we rolled out with this retail space. And this was something we talked about when I was a kid.
So how did your grandfather grow up on a farm or ranch, or like how did he he played football obviously, but like did he come from a ranching family back there, or how did he buy a ranch and get into cattle?
No, so my grandfather is kind of like, gosh, he is like the man's man. So he grew up in West Virginia, in Wheeling, West Virginia, and high school he was in the coal mines. Like he lived hard, and never really had an agricultural background, but always had an affinity for ranching and cowboys, and wanted to live that life. And I think that when he played for the Bears and the Cowboys, that the notoriety and everything that came along with his success allowed him to have the means to purchase a ranch and to live that dream. And really that's what it kind of sprung from, as a dream, and that's really it. And he hired very smart people to surround him and help guide him through this and set it up. I mean, friends and family helped build this place. I mean, this wasn't just he bought it like this, or he bought it and did it himself. I mean, it took a tribe to build this place. And so once he got out of the Cowboys, he started this, and then just rocked it out. Yeah.
So then, I mean, so you're third. So let's go. How did?
So my dad.
Well, your dad, but then also you growing up. Did you spend time out here? So.
Yeah. So it was mostly me and my grandfather out here. So my grandfather literally taught me everything I know, from riding horses to breaking horses to calving. Like I was probably kindergarten, and I was pulling out like my first calf and going back to school and telling them like, "Oh, you never believe how this happened." I got in trouble for that, but
yeah.
So yeah, every Friday, Saturday we would come up here, and then
because you were living in Dallas.
Because we were going back and forth to Dallas, because he had another company down there that my dad now runs, Uniforms Incorporated.
Okay.
And so we would go back and forth, and then we'd spend our summers out here, and we'd work the land and work the cattle and do all that stuff. And then Lorenzo and Nato, his father, were out here working with us and making sure everything was helped maintained. And so whatever we put into place, they kept it going. And that's how we did it for 15, 20 years until, Grandpa got sick, and then it was kind of me coming out here when I could in college, and me coming out here when I could when I got back from the military. And so, in a way, it was like I felt helpless in the sense that I couldn't do anything for the ranch while I was gone in these different situations. But, this was always something that I had told my wife, something is calling me here. So, when I first got back, me and my wife were actually taking a drive in the pasture behind us right now, and I looked at her and I was like, what if we could make this our dream? Like, think about how cool it would be to raise our daughter out here, teach her the ways of the land, just have the childhood I had. And she's like, yeah, I'm 100% on board, like, let's do it. And luckily that's how everything unfolded, and we've been able to push forward on that.
So your dad, was he a rancher by any means or not?
So he was a rancher in his early life, and then he broke his back and couldn't really move around as well as he used to, and so I think that kind of put him out of the game for the most part, because at that point you can't lift anything heavy. Riding horses is a gamble, because if you get bucked off again, that's possible paralysis. I mean, there's cowboys a lot that have a lot of worse injuries, but I guess it's just a personal weighing of risk. So, but he was probably involved in the ranch until his early 30s, and then he started taking over the company from my grandfather that's in Dallas.
Okay, gotcha. So going back to your wife a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll kind of come through that. Was she an agricultural background of any type, or was she just a city girl that you got to bring to the ranch?
Oh, man. So she's a city girl I got to bring to the ranch, but she grew up with a very country dad.
Mm-hmm.
So she had just enough to get down with the idea, you know what I mean? But no, she's absolutely in love with the land, the animals, the environment, what our mission is. She sees the vision for where this is going. And those are the things that she gets really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were to go get some lease land out there and want to go hunting or something, she's probably not game for that. But
Yep.
If there's actual business motive behind it, it makes sense to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did it? So how the lead up, or because you got married while you were before you got discharged?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So-
me and my wife got married in 90 days, bro. 90 days.
That's impressive.
Yeah, scary impressive.
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, I hope I made the right choice. You're pretty cool. I like you. We'll
Yeah.
see how this plays out.
So far, so good.
Yeah, so far so good. 5 years later, we're still rocking it out.
Good deal. With one daughter and another one on the way.
One daughter and another one on the way. Yeah, doing July.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. But yeah, I met her at Whole Foods.
Whole Foods.
Yeah, you could say it was an organic meeting, if you will.
You could.
Yeah.
Very nice. All natural.
All
that.
natural, yeah. Yeah.
So you get married in the military. You get discharged after you get married.
Right, yep.
So you're trying to find a job, figure that out. So then and then you said the family was getting together to make some big decisions. So how did it go from discharge to I'm going to run a ranch? How did it all, and how did the family take it, or how did that all go?
Oh, man. The family, okay, so let's start with how did I get here? I got here by knowing what I know growing up with it,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the potential of what I could do with it. You get out here and you start working. It's one of those things that it's almost like riding a bike. I don't want to make it seem like that oversimplified, but it's like if you know how to approach a situation, you can make it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so getting back on the bike. So basically it's like I'm on the bike at this point. I know how to pump the pedals and hold on straight. Then the other part of it was, how does this look if I come out here and do all this work and put all this together?
Just quickly.
Yeah.
So when did the idea come into your head to I might want to go back to the ranch? Discharge, looking for jobs, it just came, or was
No.
it was always there and just
Yeah.
kind of trickled it?
It was always there, but I just never knew how to make it reality.
Okay.
So there was always something that prevented us from doing it, like financials, or we were moving because of the military, or we had a baby and now it's like we got to go a million different places because of some reason or another. We just never set roots anywhere, and it was really tough for us for a while because, just to frame that up, me and my wife moved 6 times in 3 years. Yeah. And
It's like living in a bus.
yeah, right? Yeah, very similar. So it's not a conducive environment to really start a ranch in with all that instability.
Yep.
But then I laugh, when I say that, because ranching is nothing but instability. You do something today, you won't see the ripple effects for another 3 months, and you just gotta play with it on the fly.
Yep.
So when I got back from the military, that was kind of like my aha moment. Like, all right, well, we've had kids now. We're going back home, done with the military. Like, we checked off all these boxes that we said we were going to set out and do. It's time to put roots down and, be here. So when I came back and, heard that they were going to have this meeting, or this family meeting about the ranch and these different things about, helping or planning the future for my grandparents, I kind of just went in with an open mind, really not expecting to take charge of anything or even have the opportunity presented to us.
Was this an open meeting? Anybody could come in the family, or
Yeah.
It was open to any family members?
Yeah, so it was basically open to like the older family members, so like my grandparents, my aunt, my dad, and me. And so when we went into that meeting and they started bringing up all these different things, and they were like, all right, in the ranch, like who's gonna run this? If is this an asset you guys want to keep? Like, are you gonna make something of it? Because again, my grandfather was already in decline, and this is an asset that's been kind of left alone for 5 to 6 years now.
So he got out in 2006, you said?
Yeah.
And the meeting was roughly...
That was in 17.
17?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's 11.
Almost 10 years.
That's
yeah,
11 years.
11 years. Gosh, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, so it just kind of sat there for 11 years.
Well, I mean, I say sat there. I mean, Lorenzo and all the guys were still here doing like the day-to-day grind, but it really had no direction.
It wasn't progressing.
Yeah, there was no pulse to it. It was just we're maintaining.
Yep.
And the way that it was going is that because it was being maintained and not pushed forward, you started having all these issues with, unfortunately, theft. All those things that come along with not being up here, not micromanaging, but just managing it.
Yeah.
And so that
having a presence.
Yeah, having a presence, exactly. And so, I think that was the first kind of dynamic switch is when I came up here and I started seeing all these insufficiencies and, all these inefficiencies as well, that we had an operating budget of $375,000. All right, we took that in 1 year and dropped it all the way down to $230,000. Just by cleaning it up, making everything, like giving protocols, making a ranch manual, doing all these like little things that should have been taken care of but weren't because there wasn't anybody here to kind of just direct the show.
Yeah.
So when that question got popped, do you want to take the ranch? I was realistically the only one in that meeting that was like 100%, yeah, financially, everything, I'm all on board. We drafted the contract up and got it signed. I took over the ranch officially this year, so kind of like scary still, but something I'm extremely excited about, especially with all the collaborative projects that we've started involving ourselves in. So I think we've got a bright future ahead of it.
So what was it? So when you went into the meeting, did you know what's the best way to put this? Did you know the ranch was, quote unquote, in the condition it was when you got there? And like, did you have all these ideas, or did the ideas come once you got there and started seeing things, or like where was your mind from like saying yes to seeing it and all that? Like, I'm kind of all over on this question because I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So there was no like, I had a rough idea. I knew that I wanted to take our beef retail. That was about it.
Yep.
So I didn't really understand what that would mean until I actually got out here and I was like, okay, this is what we need to fix. This is what we need to implement, all those things to actually make that big picture happen. That was something that was a little bit of a learning curve for me. And just managing the different personalities that work with a large operation or with a medium operation.
Yeah.
Because it's like you'll meet some colorful people, that's for sure, and you got to make sure that you manage them because people sometimes get vindictive and they'll come and mess up your land if you don't keep the relationship going right. You know what I mean? So it's things like that I had to learn on the fly. But I think if I'm understanding your question correctly,
So I guess. So when you got to the ranch after saying I want to take it over, what was your mindset, and then what was the reality when you got there?
Oh, so My mindset was I'm going to attack this, and I use the word ferociously.
Yeah.
Like, this was a do or die situation. It was already a do or die situation before I even got there, and then I just put myself into this insane timeline to make this all work.
Yep.
And then it was a do or die situation for me personally.
Yeah.
So I think that I literally went in with the guns blazing. There was no holding back, and the metaphor I like to use is I burned my boats. So there's an old story, I can't remember exactly verbatim, but the folks come, there's apparently a battle that happens, and I'm not going to remember this story at all. I'm butchering it right now, but anyway, the battle is that I'm going to say Vikings come over. They park their boats on the beach, and there's a commander that says, listen, there's no surrender, no retreat. We're going to burn our boats and send them out to sea. And so they were like, we're either going to win it or we're going to die. And so that was kind of the mentality that I took on with the ranch, is that I'm going to burn my boats. I'm all in.
Yep.
And I don't think that any operator or producer can go into a situation like this, or in any situation in the agricultural field, and not say that I'm 100% on board. And like, if this doesn't work, like, I'm going down with the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're doing a fantastic job on, is relaying that passion and that motivation and the drive that these ranchers and producers have, like myself, to show the consumer the level of quality and the level of care that not only we give to the animals, but the land itself. The amount of thought that we have to put into what we're applying to the grasses, and what times of the year we're planting, and what's the most beneficial feed to feed the cattle, and all that stuff, that goes into the process. Really gets negated when you go and pick up your $5.99 steak at Kroger or whatever the case may be. Nobody sees that story. It's just a shrink wrap piece of meat.
Yep.
So I think that was the main motivation when I took all this over, is that I'm bound and determined to reconnect my neighbors, friends, and family, and eventually the nation, with a producer, myself, that's going to deliver something that everybody's been asking for years now. And that's, 1, traceability, 2, quality, and we're gonna do it in a way that's convenient for everybody. So we've broken it down into 6 different packages that are already curated for you, so there's no guesswork. It's just a flat fee. Pay for it, you get your poundage, or you can come out and you can buy it by the pound. I mean, that was the whole premise of getting it set up in the retail space. I mean, everybody has their packages and whatnot, and they sell the beef by the pound, but it's like, how convenient is it for the consumer to actually get it from the rancher? These are the things I think about. Are you making it harder or easier for yourself to gain the visibility to the people that actually want that beef?
So when you came to the ranch and you said that your only idea was really get to retail, was your plan to go down the conventional route? So it was always to go grass-fed 100%? So how did you come up, was that just part of that retail idea, or did you organically come to that too?
I like that.
Yeah.
No, I think that was a personal ambition of mine because of what I've seen of the conventional side of the operation. There's a lot lacking in health and welfare. There's a lot lacking in the quality that's given to these animals. I mean, I understand when you're selling by the weight for a live animal, that makes sense to try and pack them in pounds and, get them all into a feedlot and, get them. But, at the same time, would you want your meat raised like that? I mean, do you want to eat something that was packed in there and done like that? I don't know. Not me. So my thing is that I wanted to bring it all the way back. I wanted to clean out all the crap. You can't ever tell what's going into the food. I mean, you have your general idea of what they put on the feed tag, but it's like, there's still things that they're not even listing on, the graham crackers inside the house.
Yep.
So the transparency, the convenience, all of that rolled into one is really what the effort was.
Yeah. So did you know about all these certifications you had to go through, or how did that? Because you said it usually takes 2 years.
Yeah.
So once you learned about it, did you like, we're gonna do this fast, or was it like, I guess, how did that come together?
So yes, it took a lot of research to actually find the certifications that I wanted. Because as you know, there's a lot of certifications out there. Not all of them like get the visibility or have the notoriety as some others do. So I wanted to get into a brand or a label that gave us some type of base for viewership, and had good standards and had good ethics and all that. It had to be a complete package. And I knew that after looking at the certifications and looking at other ranches and what they were offering, that I wanted to narrow it down. I had to have these 4 certifications before I would launch my retail brand, because that's the level or the standard that I wanted to be my baseline. So I got Go-Tex and I got Homegrown by Heroes, excuse me. I've got American Grass-Fed Association, and then I'm a Gap Step 4 operation. So all of those combined, if you look at them individually, they really don't make sense. But if you put them all together and you actually see, okay, Farmers for Veterans requires me to keep a 50% base employment of disabled veterans and veterans. And so that was really close to me. That's what I want my operation to be about, is helping others. And then the AGA, that's just cleaning out our nutrition, that's cleaning out our cattle, that's making sure we're not giving growth hormones, antibiotics, all that crap that the conventional system allows, because they're more of price per weight than it is for the quality of it. And then the Gap. The Gap is just kind of a upgrade from BQA, in my opinion.
Okay.
So if I can teach my folks BQA, which is Beef Quality Assurance, and then we can go into the Gap program, which is like on steroids BQA. There's a lot of research that goes into like dark, no roll meat and like dark meat and all that stuff. And that caused by bruising and cattle prods and all these other things that, in a conventional operation are good. But then again, I'm having to put my name on this, so I wanted to make sure that everything was above board, because I don't want to put out a subpar product.
Yep.
So with those 4 in mind.
What's the last one?
So it was Homegrown by Heroes, Go Texan, Gap, and American Grass-Fed Association.
So which one's the Go Texan?
So the Go Texan is basically an association that promotes Texas-made products.
Okay.
So that was a really big thing for me as well, is because we pride ourselves, as does any Texan, on making Texas-made products. So, being a native Texan, that's like essential to have. You're not Texan enough if you don't have Go Texas on it.
Okay.
So that was one for me, not for everybody else.
Yeah. That's all right. You got to do some things for you, too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a give and take, guys. So, yeah, those are the 4 that I thought were essential and made sense with each other. Like, we didn't just go picking out certifications just to throw a bunch of certifications on our paperwork. We actually want them to work together, not only work together, but actually go make sense, It's like everything fits in its own little cubby.
Yeah. So you get certified within under a year, which they said it would take 2 years.
Yeah. So that was because we were going after 2 really hard certifications. The Gap and the AGA were the 2 certifications that they were like, oh, those will probably take a year apiece. And so I was like, nah, we're going to get them in a year, both of them. And we did. And I was like really shocked.
Yeah. So what are the qualifications to?
So Gap and AGA don't listen, but yeah. So it's just some of them off of the top of the head. It's like you're no growth hormones, no antibiotics. For AGA, you can't use any grain binders, grain byproducts, no animal byproducts. You have to use molasses-based tubs. I mean, we had to go get custom tubs. We went and searched through probably 50 to 100, I would dare say 200 different feed stores or lots that we could actually utilize some of their non-GMO or like grass-based products. And that was really tough. A lot of it really narrowed down to like sunflower. And this is like during the winter months when forage is completely gone. There's a calculation that the AGA sets forth that you can only give them like 1% of their body weight through their whole lifetime of anything but grass. So like in the winter months, if you need to supplement just a little bit, you're able to do that per this calculation, and that'll give you your basis. But the gap, it's like you can't walk around with cattle prods. You have to use calf table. You got to basically gentle handle, no screaming or yelling when you're herding them. Fence line weaning, castrate. There's like so gap is really tough on castration. So we could have been step 5, but we castrate. So they knocked us down to 4. That was the only criteria that was keeping us out of 5. I was like shocked.
So you can't castrate at all to get into 5?
Yeah, there can be no physical alterations to the animal if you go step 5. So, but if you want to stay in step 4, the regulation is that you have to castrate or do your physical alterations before 3 months of age. Gotcha. So that's kind of how we've been working. And then the traceability. So the GAP is basically health and wellness and traceability. AGA is your grass-fed standards, what they require as for what is a grass-fed cow or a steer or any type of cattle. So those are the kind of nuances that we had to adjust ourselves to and really get our cowboys used to not doing the old rag and tag way, and being rough with them and just getting them down because they're calves. And getting better at the BQA, I think, was the big shift. Training was the big shift for my employees.
This might be a really weird question, but how did the cows handle such a quick change? I mean, you're taking conventional cows on a quote-unquote conventional diet in the winter to a completely grass, Was there did you notice anything there? I mean,
yes.
The cows just looked at you and were like, you sucker, you took away my food.
Yeah. I mean, they went on the Jenny Craig diet real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing I noticed was that it was a little bit of, I think we did roll it out too fast, just slightly. And this is, again, one of those things that we get back to you're constantly in a state of instability, but you're stable for the most part.
Yeah.
So the cows lost a little bit of weight. Their body condition went down a little bit. We caught it early enough, thank God. And we supplemented with some custom mixed mineral, and we got them onto a higher premium grass. So we weren't giving them like cattle grade hay or anything like that. We were giving them like good alfalfa and good stuff like that. And then once that started getting into their system and getting into the rumen, and they were able to process that and understand, a little bit more how we were going to work them.
They're progressing to eat cows again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, it just took a little bit. It's like going on any diet. You got a little bit of shock at first, and then you adjust. But I think the main thing that helped us through that transition is the gap, and how we handled the cattle and the calves and the whole process. Because, if we would have switched them over on this diet, and then we would have run them like we typically did back in the day, that would have stressed them out way too much for them not having the amount of nutrition they're used to. And that's when you would have seen a lot of those problems start cropping up. And luckily we didn't have any of that, and I think that's because we implemented GAP so quickly into our program.
Yeah. So how long? So you get all the certification under a year.
Mm-hmm.
So then from that point, how long till you're retailing?
We're already retailing. So we started retailing in November, and we've been selling at the Dallas Farmers Market and the Las Colinas Farmers Market. And from those farmers markets is kind of where we've gotten these offshoot projects.
So are you selling retail? So you get the 4 certifications.
Mm-hmm.
Were you like next day retail, or how long after
Couple
the
weeks after.
Couple weeks?
Yeah, not
Wow.
very long. I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
And then again, the sense of urgency kind of came from we were already at that like do or die situation. So it's like if we don't just start producing money to maintain our bills, then we're just sliding further and further and further. And we've got now all of this startup cost that we decided to put on ourselves to do all these, grass-fed initiatives and, health and wellness and buy the freezers and the refrigerators to go retail. I mean, there was probably $20,000 or $30,000 up front that we had to put into the operation just to get it retail ready, so we could go and cater to the public instead of selling a live animal to the sale barn.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest growing pain and the biggest source of my anxiety is that now I've got this bill over my head and I've got to hustle and flow.
So when you decided to go, when you got to the point of going retail,
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide on what cuts and prices and all that stuff?
So honestly, I did it off of what I like for the most part,
Yeah.
and what I've seen a lot of chefs use. I think that watching and learning more about high cuisine and these things that are really trending right now curtailed what I put on my menu or what I put on my price sheet. For instance, like we do ossobuco and we do oxtail, we do beef heart, we utilize every single piece of that steer in some way or fashion. Like if we're taking the tendons and we're making them into dog toys, and we're taking some of the organ meat and we can diversify it into either dog, like a wet dog food, or we can do the bones, the marrow bones, and all that stuff as well. Doing that. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I kind of got off track there.
Yeah, your retail cuts and prices.
Yeah, so the retail cuts and prices. So the chefs is the biggest thing. When I started coming out with the ossobuco, I started getting calls from the restaurants, and I started getting people that were more interested locally, Dallas-wise, in what we had to offer. And that's how actually I came into my partnership with Chef Peter Barlow of Flora Street Cafe downtown, and he actually came out to the ranch and experienced what we have out here. And the place, that lake I took you to today, call it my field of dreams. And I showed him that oak tree where we're going to set everything up, and we probably sat there for like 2 or 3 hours just spitballing ideas about how we're going to set this up, and how we're shuttling people in from Dallas, and we just want to make this thing like something nobody has ever seen before.
Yep.
And we're doing it. It's going to be a really cool project, and there's going to be more coming out about it in the coming month, because we're hoping to roll this out into March, beginning of April.
Oh, wow.
And so the Hilton is actually interested as well on that project, and they're going to be our transportation, hopefully, on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be real sweet.
Yeah. And then the DISD was the other project that we were working on, and they were actually a contact that I found through the farmers market. So when I go to these farmers markets, the way I get people engaged is I go, "What do you know about grass-fed beef?" And then they either say, "Oh, I don't know anything," or "Oh, I know a bit," and I tell them what I know about it. And there was this director of CTE, or Career Training and Education, from the Dallas Independent School District, that came up to me and wanted to talk. And so I found out that they actually have a 200-acre plot of land, the DISD does, and they want to replicate what we were doing out here.
What DISD?
Yeah, DISD, Dallas Independent School District.
Okay, sorry.
Has a 200-acre plot, and they want to do a carbon copy of our grass-fed operation. And so I went out there to consult them and I'll do all this, and like all these ideas started popping in my head because they want to use our cattle for projects and all this stuff. So now I'm starting to see this relationship develop between Chef Barlow, the DISD, and our ranch. Okay, so now what my mission is kind of a it scares me a little bit because it'd be so cool if it happens. But if I can teach the DISD how to raise their own cattle and to develop their own retail space on that piece of property they have, and allow them to raise a herd that would then offset assisted lunches at the DISD so that the kids could get good proteins instead of processed proteins or processed foods. And I want to bring that in as a collaborative with other ranches like, microgreens and your vegetables and your fruits and all that stuff. But my main focus is the beef. And so if they use our cattle for these projects, and then they slaughter those and then sell it on a retail front, that can offset the cost of the operation. But at the same time, all the grant money and things that they're getting for these assisted lunches could be offset and then used for their program, because that is then feeding the school system. So that's my overall plan. And then Chef Barlow would come in and basically be the chef face of the project. He would take the beef and show the schools how to cook it and prepare it and do all these cool things and do the fundraisers to raise money for the kids and have these assisted lunches. That's kind of or not have these assisted lunches, but to have the opportunity to have a better assisted lunch.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my long shot project here, but the pop-up dinners at the ranch I think are going to be super fun.
Yeah, those will be sweet. You show me where you're going to do it, that'll be pretty sweet to sit there and eat some great food.
Yeah.
Huh. So you got it. Well, what else is, ideas are not far from you.
Yeah.
What else you got brewing back there? You got other things that you want to do or want to share?
Yeah, I think that what we're doing with our quarter horse operation is really.
And I forget you guys got horses too.
yeah, we're well rounded. That's something I really want to see come back, and one of the things that I was going to reach out to a couple of folks about is the Horses for Heroes program. I really want to get involved with them. I think that we need to have a better stock of horses, or at least more of them, because right now I think we've got 18. I think is the final count. So coming from 120 broodmares or whatever it was to 18 total, that's a little bit of a shocker, and especially trying to do it through natural reproductive system or ways. That even delays the process, because we want to keep our bloodlines intact because they're just amazing cutting bloodlines. And the sky is literally limitless. Like, I would have never thought of doing any of this DISD stuff, any of this, partnering with a chef or any of that. But these are the things that us as producers and ranchers have to really think about in diversifying, what we have, because the conventional, I keep saying conventional, but the old school way of doing things, what we grew up understanding and what made our grandparents and parents money, is no longer really becoming a viable option for this new generation of ranchers, because there's just so much restriction and so much hoopla that goes into marketing and everything of the beef. It's a very saturated market as it is. Yeah. So you got to be creative and come up with different things to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack.
You get asked a lot for specific cuts that you don't have?
Yeah, there's this one guy that keeps asking me for tripe.
Yeah.
I don't have tripe, bro. Yeah.
Not too many people want stomach.
Yeah, well, I heard, don't they use it in menudo?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know it's like part of the stomach or something, but
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it.
I've always thought it was way too chewy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I've ever had it, to be honest with you. I just know that it kind of comes from that, so.
Yeah, well, hey, you're at a ranch. We could always try anything.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you have restaurants reaching out to you for more? Like you say, you're hooked up with this chef guy, Chef Barlow.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still pursuing restaurants, or restaurants calling you, or are you just kind of?
So I think we're in a really unique situation. So where we are right now, as far as our retail herd is concerned, um, I think we're a little bit too small to take on more than a couple of restaurants at this point, because we still have to support our retail. And when I say retail side of it, I mean like just direct to customer retail. Side of things, because that's actually where a lot of our money is being made right now, is just selling directly to the consumer.
At farmers markets or
Right.
off the ranch?
Both.
Both?
Yeah, so people are starting to like want to come out to the ranch and visit, and we give them a little tour and tell them how we're doing things.
You put them in the Bronco?
Yeah, we put them in the Cowmobile. Yeah. Yeah, well, I won't back up with them. So.
Yeah. That was a little dicey today, but we got through it.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh, I was like, great, Brandon. Great first impression. About killed them all.
Yeah. Trying to save your dog, man.
Yeah. You know, you just got to go full bore sometimes.
Yeah.
But.
Everybody was okay. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Where were we? I'm sorry.
Reaching out to other restaurants. You're trying to keep, you don't think you're big enough yet to go much bigger with restaurants because of your retail.
Yeah. So, and the kind of unique thing, what I'm getting back to, the unique situation is that we didn't just land any chef. This is Chef Barlow, and, if I was to have gone out and looked for a chef on my own without ever having this opportunity, I don't know if I would have found that caliber with that kind of a portfolio of abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Because what he's really offering us is a way to not only market ourselves and get our beef out there into a restaurant, but also it gives us the notoriety of being attached to a brick and mortar restaurant that's been very well known in the Dallas area, and allows us to branch out and create a brand for ourselves with our pop-up dinners, and really see what can be an offshoot of all of that.
Yeah.
So I think I really lucked out when I found Chef Barlow, in the sense that I don't think I would have found a cooler cat.
Yeah. So did you find him, or did he?
We were put in touch by a mutual friend.
Okay.
Yeah. My accountant, actually. They're always our friends.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my accountant's a huge foodie. And so he's like, hey, I really think that Chef Barlow would be interested in what you're talking about. And I was at a hotel, actually, at the Beef 706 course down at A&M. When I got that call, and he was like, just reach out to him, I'll send you his contact number. And then like later on that night, he puts me on a group text and like gets me on the spot, like Chef Barlow's already texting back and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. Like,
yeah.
And so I just started talking to him and like just told him what the vision was, told him like all the revamps that we have done on the ranch and what our, end goal is for all of this, with the DISD included and everything. And he was like all about it, all on board. And I think that he's only added more flavor and character to what my vision was than I could have probably imagined. Like the fixtures, the smokers, and all the cool stuff that I'm gonna build out here is unique to itself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna. That's what we were going for, though. You're not going to find that anywhere but probably Argentina.
Yeah.
So unless you want to jump on a plane, be
Yeah.
my guest. But yeah, and he's a fun-loving guy, never has a frown on his face. So
Yeah.
those are the people I like working with, and
Yeah, for
that
sure.
made it really easy.
Well, good deal.
Yeah.
Just a little, I guess you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, what's your overall current thoughts on the beef industry as kind of a whole? Where do you think things are going? What are the positives? What are the challenges we are facing right now as a beef industry?
Well, there's a lot to say about the beef industry. I think that the beef cattle as a whole are probably one of the more profitable animals that you can raise if you can do it right. Now, somebody will probably yell at me for saying that, but there is a way of making sure that you stay profitable. Does the beef industry make it easy to do that? No, not really. Because for these smaller producers that maybe don't have the wherewithal to market themselves correctly or don't have the wherewithal to privately sell correctly, I mean, there's a slew of things that are an obstacle in the rancher's world. The industry as a whole, I think, is taking steps to make that process a little bit easier for everybody and make yourselves a little bit more accessible as producers. But then you still have the whole, I don't want to say it's mislabeling, but it's just misleading labeling with how much beef we're actually importing and then calling it American or sidetracking an American brand altogether just for an Australian brand or something like that because it maybe sounds exotic. I don't know what the deal is, but, things like that. Like, I don't understand the reason we're not promoting the American-made product more in these recent years, but it seems like it's coming around with USMCA and all that stuff. Hopefully that'll level out the playing field and open up a lot of avenues because I know Mexico is a really big buyer of American beef. Canada, as well. Yeah. So just opening up those borders to allow us to go up there and, market and do it privately. Yeah. I think really changes the dynamic of things.
What advice do you have for, your thing is being transparent and getting that consumer back to where their food comes from and all that stuff. So, like, what advice do you have for consumers? Like, what do you want? What should they be asking, or what do you want them to know, or what should they be thinking about?
Well, I think they should ask, where is it coming from? First of all, like realistically, like learn your labels. Learn your labels. That's the biggest thing because those will tell you a lot about the producer. If you can learn your labels and you're somewhat educated about your beef as far as the consistency, the marbling, all these factors that the butchers themselves look at, I think would be a huge eye opener for consumers because there is a class that they did at the Beef 706 course where they took from prime all the way to select, and they did a blind taste test. It was all cooked the same. You got a cup of water and a saltine cracker to clean your mouth. I mean, that is it. And the consistency and the flavor of all these different ones was so minute that it really made me wonder what the purpose of the grading system was. Because a majority of it, in my opinion, is how you cook it. Mm-hmm. Like I can make a select steak taste amazing. And I think that leads back to, and then grass-fed is even on the grading scale. We don't have a select, a choice, upper choice, and all that prime. We're grass-fed. That's it. You can try and test the ribeye or grid the ribeye and see how it comes out, but it's, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. Learn about beef, learn about the consistency, learn your labeling, ask questions, and work with producers that are going to share those things with you. Like for me, for instance, I tell every single one of my customers, come out and see the ranch, come out and meet your meat, There's
come
nothing.
Meet your meat. That's
yeah. So we actually tried to do that as a separate program. It didn't do so well.
Come and meet your meat. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. But think about that. Think if every producer was like, come buy a steak from me, and if you want to see where it comes from, come out and I'll personally drive you. How profound of a statement is that?
Yeah.
You know, any of my customers, they buy a package, I have a pickup party for them. So instead of, your wine pickup party where you go get your case of wine or whatever and hang out and meet other people, we have you come out to the ranch, we give you a tour, we have wine and cheese, and you pick up your package and go home.
Yep.
But you're seeing everything that we have. We're completely 100% there for you.
Yeah. That's so cool. So as a young, what'd you say, 30?
Yeah, 30.
So as a young beef producer, what advice do you have for, young, is there opportunity for young people to get their foot in the door? Say, you had an operation to come into.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice for young people that want to get into the beef industry? Do you think it's possible to start from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
What are your aspects on that?
Yeah, 100% it is possible to start from scratch. Is it hard? Yes, very hard. So if you are going to start from scratch, just know that you're going to have to be very hungry for the first 3 years and hustle, hustle, hustle. I would say first 3 years, because that gives you a little bit of time to build up your herd and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of room, especially with everything kind of being separated out into these niche spaces like organic and grass-fed and all natural, and then you got conventional. Think about just the demand alone for grass-fed beef is so high that we can't even meet the current demand. The supply just doesn't meet it. And that's what I'm experiencing right now. So if I was to say, all this is going to be gone tomorrow, what business are you going to get into? I would say I'd probably get back into the cattle business, to be honest. And that would probably be the first time a rancher would say that. But I think that the climate for beef is becoming more optimistic, more accessible. Agriculture's getting cool again. Everybody's wanting to do their pop-up dinners and farm to table and, go and reconnect with nature, which is great, don't get me wrong. But you have to, as a rancher, not be stuck in your I've done it for 60 years this way, I'm not going to change my image or my brand or anything like that. You've got to stay flexible with the times to keep up and stay profitable. And that happens, I think, generationally. Like, the way that my grandfather did it's different from the way my dad wanted to do it. And the way my dad did it, I'm totally off to left field on, So I think it's matched to your personality. If you feel that you're going to be that type of person that's going to go out every day and give it 110%, whether that be working cattle, going and sealing deals at restaurants, or selling directly to the consumer, just understand that every single day you have to be accomplishing something. And if you can consistently accomplish the goals that you set out with every day, you'll hit your mark.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. Really good. So is there, finishing up here just a little bit, so is there, you have grand ideas, is there any other, do you have any aspiration for, your own restaurant or your own butcher shop or anything like that? Where are those in the realm of possibility?
Yes. I definitely want my own butcher shop for sure. That's probably our 5-year goal.
On the ranch?
On the ranch, yeah. On site, USDA grade.
Are you going to be the butcher, or?
Yeah, if I need to be, like I said, hey man, if you got to do what you got to do. If I need to get in there and cut beef, I'm going to get in there and cut beef.
Yeah.
It's funny, even the USDA processing facility down there that I take them to right now, they let me jump in and cut beef with them.
Yeah.
And it's all day.
Cool.
How
far away is it?
45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah, more east than here.
Okay.
Mineola Packing. That just little name drop for them.
There you go. Give them a
plug. So they're really cool and let me cut it. But yeah, 100% gonna get the meat processing facility out here and start running our own beef, because that's a huge cost for us on the retail side of things. I want to maybe I think that Butcher Box has got a great idea, but I'd like to see it in more of a local setting instead of like all these national folks coming into one brand and then selling. If, like I was telling you earlier today, if each locality could have their own ranching system or their little agricultural ecosystem that sustains, Dallas or whatever the surrounding areas are, I think that agricultural system looks a lot better and will yield a better product to the consumer than trying to mass produce for a national consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of the love of ranching kind of gets lost, is when we start trying to cater to the millions instead of catering to our own folks.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's kind of a good spot to end it,
Yeah.
unless you got anything else to add. But I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me and my family to come out here and check out the ranch, and I got to drive your Ford Bronco. That was sweet. But it was a great time. I really do appreciate everything that you're doing. I hope to stay in touch with you for sure in the future and see what you're doing. But just thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and coming out and sharing all of this with me. I think it's really cool, the mission that you're on, and trying to reconnect your listeners and your audience to ranchers and producers.
Yeah.
That's a noble quest, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But people can find you. You got website.
So you can find me at www.happyhollowbeef.com or happyhollow.beef on Instagram. Those would be the two best ways to check us out.
Yeah. Awesome.
You can find all our contact info on the website.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. So, I guess I got to get one dig since the Vikings did beat the Cowboys this last
night. Gross. Oh, man. Yeah, you can keep your win as long as I keep my warm weather.
Yeah. There you go. You do got me on that for sure.
Oh, man.
So, but thanks, Brandon. It was a blast.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
And there you have it, guys. That was Brandon Howley of Happy Hollow Beef. I must say, really thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I really do enjoy it. If you enjoy the podcast, please take the time to give me a rating on iTunes or whatnot. And, check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and the same for Brandon. Happy Hollow Beef on Instagram, Facebook. Check them out and give them a like and just give them a shout and say hi. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.